Okay, so welcome and a special welcome to Ray Jones from Ray Jones Woodcrafts. We're really thrilled to have you in. I know I've seen you at several pen shows, and I always have to stop and check out your storage boxes because they're kind of amazing. So thank you so much for joining us. What do you got today?
Thanks, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here. I always like doing the St. Louis Pen Show. I was really disappointed that we didn't get to do it last year or this year, but I'm confident for next year, and hopefully I'll see some of you at some of the other pen shows. So I make boxes, and I'm going to start out with a little bit of my history, and then how I got into making pen boxes, and we'll go from there. If anybody has trouble hearing me, say something, and I'll try to speak up. But anyway. I started out as an aeronautical engineer in Southern California, and I was a development engineer for a company that made rockets and ramjets. This was one of my first projects. I helped develop these engines. It was for a target test drone for the Navy. I worked on that program off and on for about 5 years and got it all ready to fly, and the Navy canceled the program, changed their minds. And that's kind of the way it is with aerospace a lot. But anyway, when I was going to college, I grew up in Northern California, a little town called Healdsburg. And when I was going to college, in the summers in between, I worked in construction. And I was very fortunate to work for this one guy each summer throughout my college years. And we were doing construction, and he was building a small industrial site and an industrial park and his dream home. And I didn't learn to make the kind of woodwork that I do now, but it gave me a lot of confidence in working with my hands. So when I left college and went to work in LA, instead of buying furniture, I bought tools and started making my furniture. And then I met my wife-to-be, Linda, and she already had a house full of furniture. So I started working on smaller things and came up with a box that I designed for her, which has become the basis of the design of the boxes that I've been making ever since. And I left engineering in 1982 to be a woodworker full time. So it's been almost 39 years. In September, it'll be 39 years. What sets my boxes apart is that I don't use any metal parts. The hinges are wooden, the fasteners are wooden. Also, I don't use any stains or paints or dyes. Nature has such a wonderful color palette that I don't feel like I could improve on it. So I choose to use lots and lots of different woods with interesting colors and figures and textures. I started out making jewelry boxes, basically. I mean, you could put anything you want into them. But then as I was doing art shows, I would occasionally meet people who'd say, well, can you put pens in this one? And most of them really weren't suited for pens, but I decided to make some changes. For instance, this is my smallest box. This is curly maple. And I designed it to hold business cards, which will hold a nice stack of business cards. But it's too short for pens. So when I started making pen boxes, I just made a slightly stretched design. And you can see it will hold 2 pens. Now, if somebody wants to put something other than pens, they can lift this divider right out. This wood is Macacaba from Central America. And then I had another size that was slightly larger than this one, which is this box. This one is Ambrosia Maple. And again, it was a nice box, but too short for pens. So I made a slightly longer version of that one. And that's this one, and it holds 3 pens. And again, the dividers are removable. This one is canary wood, also from South America. The dividers, like I said, are removable. And what we discovered with this, sort of by accident, is if you take out this divider, you can still put a pin here in the back, and then you have room for a nice stack of business cards. So it makes a really nice gift for somebody with a desk or an executive sort of thing. Or if you don't want to put pens in it, you can take both dividers out. So those were the small sizes that I had. And then one of my most popular sizes was sort of a small jewelry box, and it could have a tray and dividers that lift out. But this one was actually a little bit longer than you needed for pens. So I made a shorter version. This one. And this one is purple heartwood from South America. And again, this is the natural color. I don't use any stains or dyes. The hinges are wooden. If you can see that dowel right there, that's the hinge pin. And the connectors are also wooden dowels. This one has a tray that lifts out. And there are 4 pen compartments in the tray, and then 4 more in the main compartment inside the box. This one is the same size, but it's in more exotic woods. This lid is Chechen burl from Mexico. It's just a really, really nice, interesting wood. Interestingly enough, I got this from Hibden Hardwoods in St. Louis, which is an exotic hardwood dealer there. They sell mostly to the acoustic guitar industry, but they also have some solid wood that I'm like to go and get when I can. I'm like a kid in the candy store when I get there. This one is ebony on the sides. Sometimes I like the contrast between the figured wood on the lid and then just the jet black ebony. And again, it's all natural colors. This one has the 4 compartment tray that lifts out, and then 4 more compartments inside. So it would hold 8 pens. The next larger one is this one. And this one actually was already, well, it was downsized from a larger box. I made I had a box that I could use for jewelry or for tea compartments, and to put tea bags in like they do at a fancy restaurant or hotel. And so it had 8 compartments, but for a lot of people that was more than they wanted. So I made a smaller version, which was this one, but it was also just right for one of the 5 compartment trays. So this box became a 10 pen box. And I should mention that I don't glue anything inside. So everything lifts out. So if I wanted to convert this back to a jewelry box or a watch box or a tea caddy, I can easily do that just by lifting out these compartments and putting the appropriate compartments back in. This wood is more of the Macacaba. It's a pretty interesting figure and color. This is from Central America. And then this one is another of the same size, but this one has, again, 2 different woods. The lid is Amboina burl from Indonesia. And it's a super exotic wood, but really, really beautiful. And this is one that I ordered directly from individuals in Indonesia. Most of my woods I buy from specialty wood dealers. And again, this one has the ebony for the sides. And it has a tray that lifts out for 5 pens, and then compartments for 5 more pens inside. And if you have questions along the way, be sure to write them in the chat box, and Ken will relay them to me. Be happy to answer them if I can.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So a couple of the boxes, the ones with the ebony sides, you said that the wood on top is a burl. What exactly does burl mean? Is that like a type of wood, or is it a pattern?
A burl is like a tumor on a tree. It's a growth on the tree like a tumor, a benign tumor. So instead of having the trunk with the concentric cylinders, well, let me step back. If you think of a log and you cut it and you look at the end of it, you've got concentric circles, the growth rings. And if you think of those in three dimensions, they're concentric cylinders. And if you slice that up, you get the grain lines along those cylinders. Now, like I said, the burl is a growth on the side of the tree, or sometimes it's at the root, sometimes it's up in the branches. But it doesn't have that regular growth pattern. It's got swirls and eyes, and you can see that there's no regular growth pattern in there. You've got these little dots they call eyes on swirls. Now, you also will hear me talk about curly grain. And if you go back to what I was saying about the growth rings being concentric cylinders, normally those would be smooth-walled cylinders, but occasionally they're corrugated or accordioned. And if you cut along the grain, the grain is actually going like this. And each time those fibers change direction, they reflect light at a different angle. And you get something that's pretty washed out. Let's see if I can, let's try this one. This also has curly grain. And you can see the
a little better
effect in it. Yeah, I should have brought a dark one. I didn't realize it was going to be that washed out. But yeah, that's a good question. And you'll hear me talking about different figures, curly, bird's eye, quilted, and burl. And if you have any other questions about it, let me know, because I sometimes assume people know what I'm talking about. This one is another interesting, again, it's kind of washed out. You see these dark streaks? This is ambrosia maple, and it's regular maple, but the ambrosia beetle makes a tunnel in it and brings a fungus with it, and the fungus causes the gray streak. So without the beetle, it's just plain white maple, but with the ambrosia beetle, it makes it a really interesting wood. Going back a little bit, the burls being smaller parts of the tree, and not every tree has a burl. It makes them rare. The wood is beautiful, so that they tend to be a lot more expensive. And then you get into some of the super exotic ones, like the Amboina burl from Indonesia or the Chechen burl, and they can get really, really expensive. But they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another one. This one.
There's a couple other questions that popped up in chat here. Just throw out quick. Kathy wants to know, do the boxes retain the scent of the woods?
That's another good question. And usually most woods have a very mild aroma, and it's covered by the finish that I put them. I give them at least 2 coats of an oil mixture, and that usually covers up that scent. But some of the woods are very aromatic. One of them is camphor wood from Florida, and it smells like camphophenique, if you remember that when you were a kid. And I have one right here. And when I open this one up, I get that strong whiff of camphor. It may eventually dissipate with time, but it's still pretty strong now.
Cool. Thank you. And Laura wants to know, do you obtain your wood from sustainable sources?
As much as I can, I do. Sometimes it's really hard to know, but one of my favorite wood dealers, he's actually a good friend of mine, lives about 20 miles from here, and he has become one of the largest wood dealers in the country, and he's always trying to make sure that his wood is sustainably harvested according to the local laws. Now, some of the wood, like the camphor one I just showed you, that's what I call an urban forest wood, and that came from the Tampa area in Florida, and I get it from a guy there who basically rescues trees that are blown down in storms or fall down or have to be moved for construction reasons or whatever. So he's not going out cutting trees to get wood. He's taking trees that already have to be cut and saving the wood. And we get some really, really interesting figures from that. And I like doing that. When after Hurricane Wilma hit South Florida back, it's quite a few years ago now, I was contacted by a woodworker who lived in Palm Beach County, and he saw all these trees down and didn't know if they could be used or how to use them. So we emailed back and forth a few times, and he went out with his chainsaw and cut ones that he could into chunks that he could handle and stored them for me. Then that was like November, I think. And then the following February, when I went down to Miami to do an art show, I borrowed a big heavy duty trailer, towed it down empty. And after the show, I loaded it up with his wood and brought it back here and had it sawed into slabs and dried it. And I'm still using some of that.
And the mango from the backyard.
Oh yeah, and another time my wife is giving me pointers here. We rented a house while we were doing the same Miami show more recently, and they had cut down part of a mango tree and had cut the wood into firewood like sections waiting to throw it away, and had been sitting on the ground, so it had spalted quite a bit, which means fungus gets into it, starts to decompose it, and causes these really interesting black streaks in it. So anyway, I naturally picked up a couple of those and brought them home and sliced them up and dried them, and then made boxes from them. And the next year when I went back to the Coconut Grove show, I could sell boxes that were made from locally sustainably harvested wood. Used to drive my wife crazy. We would be on vacation places and I'd be watching for wood while we're driving along. And say, pull over, we got to get that. And then she started making wooden pens, and now she's right there with me in collecting wood. We're both kayakers, so a lot of times if we have our kayak trailer with us, we'll strap some boards onto it, not necessarily boards, but branches or whatever we can find. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, first, Laura says, thanks for answering her question, that it's neat that you use trees that are already down. Darren asks, do you use a wax finish or a solid polytype finish?
I use a mixture of polyurethane, boiled linseed oil, and mineral spirits. It's sort of like a Danish oil. I mix my own because I can vary the components to get the working properties that I want, and it's also cheaper. Then, after the final coat has dried for at least a day, usually 2 or 3 days, I buff the boxes on a buffing wheel with a wax compound. You could do the same thing by rubbing it with paste wax and steel wool. And that just gives it a super smooth finish. I try to make my boxes feel as good as they look. They're really very tactile. If you ever come to my booth, you'll see people doing that. They'll just touch this one and they'll touch that one. And even though they all are all finished the same way, different woods will have a different feel to them.
All right. Alina asks, have you ever worked with birch wood? If so, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've used birch. It's a lot like maple. It can be plain, but it can also be figured with curls. It usually has a pretty broad curl. The most interesting birch that I have worked with was spalted. And I didn't really bring a piece of spalted wood to show you. I should have. Anyway, it's what I was describing before. It's when the wood dies or is cut and left in the, excuse me, Linda, on the back of the bandsaw over there, there's one that's spalted. If you can get to it, my shop is pretty congested. But anyway, when wood dies and is left out in the elements, it starts to break down. And if the conditions are just right, a fungus gets into it, and the fungus causes gray streaks and lines, and it's really can be very interesting. Thanks. So this is a box that's in progress. Sorry, I don't know if you can.
Oh, right there was good.
I can see the lines. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, right there. Right
Ooh.
there.
Ooh.
This is spalted maple, but without the spalting, this would just be a plain white wood. And birch will do the same thing. Most of the light woods will do will spalt the same way. Thanks.
Awesome. And Rick asks, how old does wood have to be, or how long must it dry before you can use it?
That varies. It depends if you're kiln drying or if you're air drying. A lot of the wood that I buy is kiln dried. If I harvest it myself, it's air dried. And it depends also on the species of wood and how wet it is when you get it. The rule of thumb that you'll hear a lot is that if you're air drying, 1 year of drying per inch of thickness of wood. And that's a rule of thumb, but it varies a lot with the species and how dry it is and the conditions of where you're drying it. So I have, what I do when I get a thick piece is I'll slice it into approximate thickness and I'll stack it. We call it stickering, where they put little cross pieces in between it to let the air circulate. And then I bundle it together with shrink wrap. And I'll show you a bundle I just did the other day. Okay, so this is redwood burl. And this will eventually become some of my larger boxes. But you can see there's spaces between the boards for air to circulate. The redwood burl dries really quickly. It's a softer wood and less dense. I had another box that I had started, one of my fancier boxes made of black and white ebony. And black and white ebony, all the ebonies are super dense and very slow drying. Black and white tends to warp a lot as it dries and crack. But I started this box and set it aside to dry, and I decided to start using it or to finish it. And I was wondering if it was dry enough, and I checked the date that I had cut it up, that I had started, and it was 9 years, so it should be quite dry by now.
Awesome. All right, that's it for questions. Although Alina says, wow, that was a gorgeous piece. I think she was talking about the spalted piece. Thank you so much for showing that.
Yeah,
So
you're welcome.
So you can move forward.
Okay, this is another one that I wanted to show you because of the figure in the grain. This is called pomeli. It's kind of like curly, but it sort of curls in two directions. The wood is, the species is sapele, and the figure in it is pomeli. So it's really, really rare, and that usually makes it really expensive because they often will slice it into thin veneers. And again, I didn't mention it before, but I use all solid wood. I don't use any veneer. But it has a really wonderful three-dimensional effect to it. When you look at it, you think you should be able to feel those, but it's really, really smooth. I fortunately got a really good deal on this big batch of pomeli sapele, so I've been able to sell it at a regular price. The way I do with my pricing is I'll have a base price for each size, and then some woods will be 10% more, some 20, some 50, some 75, and some 100% more. And this would usually be in the plus 50 to plus 75, but since I got such a good deal on them, I'm selling it in the base price. This is the larger version of that tee box I was talking about before. So it's twice as long, and it has 4 of these 5-pen trays, so it would hold 20 pens. So if you're keeping track, we've done 2 pens, 3 pens, 8 pens, 10 pens. Now we're up to 20 pens. We're going to go all the way to 56 pens.
Hey, Ray, if somebody
Yeah.
wanted to be able to put longer pens in, like maybe they had desk pens or taper pens or something like that, would you be able to do something like that where the bottom layer goes straight across and then the top one is split into 2?
Yes, I can do just about anything with compartments inside. Actually, I have another guy that does it for me because once you've made a few thousand of those trays, they're pretty much all the same. But anyway, he's real good about making compartments to fit. And in fact, I have one here.
Oh, yeah.
So this would be my standard 12-pen tray that will fit in the largest boxes that I make. And then I had a customer who had some emperor pens, which are really long. So we changed it to have some very long ones here and then the regular ones beside it. It reduced the total number from 12 to 10, but that's what you get for larger pens. And surprisingly, most pens will fit in the standard compartments. I have very few requests for larger compartments, but I'm happy to do it when I do it. The outside of this is 7 inches, so it's about 6.5 inches long in there, and that seems to handle most pens.
Awesome. And Rick asks, he says, your boxes have a signature flattened oval cross section that is fairly contemporary design. Have you ever produced antique type designs, and do you take commissioned work?
I do take commissioned work if it's within the scope of what I do. I have never done the antique designs. I like doing my own designs, and this is the design that appeals to me. I originally made it rounded because I was designing it for a traveling jewelry case, but then I just liked the shape. And it also fits my method of hinging. It's a little hard to describe. If this was square, the lid would interfere with that square part right here. You probably can't tell, but anyway, the geometry wouldn't work out. But this is what I like to make. I'm happy to do custom sizes and capacities. I just finished a box In fact, I just shipped it a couple of weeks ago to a customer in Maryland that was much larger and had bigger drawers. He wanted to put his watches and his pens in it. I have another commission that I'm working on that's the biggest pen box I've ever made, holds almost 100 pens. Your camera's on, Linda, and, which is fine. But no, I've never done the antique style. I was once approached by a corporation to make, they wanted 100 boxes. They were going to do some sort of promotion for their product. And it was really funny because I was working through I guess it was a decorator in Atlanta for a company that was in Tampa. And I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. So we were, spread out. And they went to my website. They liked it, liked the pictures. I sent them some extra pictures. And then I sent them a sample. And they said, we love it. We really love your work. We love it. We want to go with it. But we want something totally different. So I actually did make, I adapted my design to make one that was more square, more rectangular for them. But anyway, and I have done, you may have seen, I've done custom pens for, not pens, pen boxes for some of the pen artists that you may see at some of the shows. And that's always fun when we get to collaborate.
Oh, yeah, Rick just wants to follow up. He says, I've seen your boxes at shows and they're gorgeous. I agree with that. Thank
you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and if you want to find me, my website is easy. It's rayjoneswoodboxes.com. Okay, so this is another one, it's the same size as the Pomeli Sapele I was just showing you, but this is another combination of Chechen burl and ebony. It's a 20 pen box. And then just about a year ago, I designed a box specifically for pens. I had a client in Puerto Rico who wanted only 2 layers with 12 pens on each layer, and he wanted a single drawer. Most of mine have double drawers. I kind of got ahead of myself here a little bit. But you can see it has a drawer that pulls straight out like that. And then the lid lifts up and there are 12 more pen compartments in there. This one is curly ambrosia maple. This one's really pretty if you can get there. It's funny how the light is. And then this one is the same size in Peruvian walnut. Peruvian walnut is much darker and tends to have less contrasting lines in it than the domestic black walnut. But again, it's got 12 pins in top and then a tray that holds 12 more. So that's 24 pins. And then this is, this one will hold 34 pens. Yeah, had to add. Okay, so it has a 12 compartment tray that lifts out and then 12 more compartments underneath and then 2 drawers, and each of the drawers has 5 pen compartments in it. Now this is another interesting wood. To me, it's very interesting. This is grafted walnut. So it's English walnut grafted to black walnut, and right there is the graft line. And this comes from California, where they grow English walnut orchards, and they take a native black walnut seedling and cut it and graft the English walnuts onto it. And the object, what they're trying to do is get good English walnuts, but the native black walnut has a stronger root system, and the English walnut obviously produces the English nuts. So this tree would have been growing like this, and from here down would be black walnut, and from here up would be English walnut. And it's amazing to me. It doesn't seem like it should work, but it really does. And it's interesting too that the two very similar species of walnut have different working properties. They'll take the oil different. One's slightly harder than the other one. Just to me, it's fascinating. But then I'm kind of a wood geek. Now this one is the same size, but it doesn't have the drawers. So it has 3 layers inside with 12 on each layer. So there's 2 of these trays that lift out and then 12 more in the bottom. This one you actually get more bang for your buck if you're interested in that, because it has 36 compartments, but since it doesn't have drawers, it's less complicated for me to make, faster, so it costs less than the one with 34 pens. And this wood is another really interesting wood. This is leopard wood from South America, and it really looks like a reptile skin or a leather. And then from there, we go to the 44 pen box. This one's heavy. Okay, so it's got the same, oh, this is the one that had the that special tray that I showed you before, but it would normally come with a 12 pin tray, 12 pins in the main compartment. And then it also has 2 drawers, and each drawer has 2 levels. So there's 5 here and 5 there, 10 per drawer, 2 drawers. So it ends up with being 44 pens. Now this wood is called Kurupe, but that doesn't sound cool. So the wood dealers will sell it as Patagonia rosewood, but it's not truly a rosewood. It's not in the Dalbergia genus, so it's kind of a misnomer. But they do that a lot with woods. They'll give it a name that sounds more expensive or more desirable, but it's still a pretty wood, whatever you call it. And this is the same size in camphor wood. This is the one I showed briefly before, we asking about the aroma. Let's see if I can get that, because it has a nice crotch pattern in the top. It's the same size, and when you open it up, gotta hang out of those drawers. You get that really strong camphor aroma. And this is the largest size of my standard boxes, and this will hold 56 pens. So it's the same as the last one I showed you, except in the top it has 3 levels. So there are 12 pens on 3 levels, that's 36, and then 10 more in each drawer for a total of 56 pens. And this one is redwood burl. This I like redwood burl. It's easy to work with. It's a really beautiful wood, and it comes from the same part of the country that I grew up in Northern California. Most of the boxes I make in lots of different woods. Like I said, I make the most of them in lots of different woods, as long as I can get the wood or have the wood. So if you like a size but you want it in a different wood, I can usually do that for you, and I'm happy to do that. Or if you see me at a show, I'll often have several different woods in each size, depending on what I'm able to make in time to bring. Then I make some more specialty boxes. This one is not really a pen box, although I made one. I sent one recently to a customer in Canada. It was larger than this one, and she was going to use it for her pens and was really happy with it. So this one has drawers. I call this a half moon box because you can see it's kind of a half circle. And the body over here is curly walnut, claro walnut, which is another species of black walnut that's native to California. And the front is maple burl, big leaf maple from Oregon. And the poles are ebony. And I'll pull one of the drawers all the way out. And you can see.
Oh, yeah.
And each one's on a dovetail slide. I didn't show you that, but on all of my drawer boxes, the drawers are on a dovetail slide that fits into a dovetail slot, and it makes them come out, slide in and out real smoothly, and then they slide out a long ways without tipping or tilting.
Okay, Darren's got a comment and a question here. He says, Peruvian walnut is also called nogal or nogal.
Yes.
I love working with it because of the smell. And he also has a question. He wanted to know what the 3rd ingredient was to your finish.
polyurethane, boiled linseed oil, and mineral spirits. Nogal is our Peruvian walnut, and it is a true walnut. It's interesting. I don't like working with it as much as the regular walnuts, but it's a really nice dark wood. And I often get asked for the dark wood. And to me, the aroma is kind of bitter, but it does have a strong aroma, although it's covered up by the finish. It is interesting working with woods. Like I said before, most of them will have a different aroma, different working properties, different texture, different feel. My favorite woods are not necessarily my favorites to work with. Some woods are very difficult to work with, but are really pretty when they're done. And others are easy to work with, but they're kind of eh. Anyway, this is sort of my pièce de résistance. I call this the Omega style because it kind of makes the letter Omega. Let me come around here. It opens like this.
Wow.
And then each of the trays lifts out. It's got a tray has a tenon on the back that fits into a slot on the back of the box. Same for the trays in the drawer in the doors. And then this lifts up. There's another compartment here. Again, this is not specifically a pen box, although I have had a couple of customers buy them to put pens in. And that the one I mentioned just a little while ago, the really big, largest pen box I've made is kind of a variation on this theme. And it's got 12 big trays. And to make it more specifically for pens, I made the trays about twice as deep. So it's much deeper front to back. And so you can put pens in it that way. And again, this is all entirely wood. The body is sapele. The drawer sides are curly maple, and all the black is ebony.
That's incredible. I like the closure mechanism you've got there too. That's pretty slick.
Thank you. That's basically a hinge.
Yeah.
The hinges are the same way, but that one's used as a latch.
Awesome.
And that's basically what I wanted to share. Happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, Laura asks, do you have anything to show us that you may have made in Indian rosewood, shisham?
Indian rosewood. There's East Indian rosewood. I don't have anything made from it right now. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. I don't know that shisham name. Do you know the botanical name for it? It would be Dalbergia something, latifolia? I'm not sure.
Yeah, she says that you are talking the same wood.
Yeah, I do use it. I don't have anything made from it right now. That's the thing with woods. I kind of touched on it before. They'll have local names, and then they'll have commercial names, and a lot of them you don't know what you're talking about until you get to the botanical name. Like ironwood. Almost every region has an ironwood, and it's completely different. And rosewood. A lot of people will call woods rosewood that are not true rosewoods. And then even within rosewoods, there are a lot of different species. Any other questions?
Darren mentions the Indian rosewood he's worked with was very red in color. And Michelle asks, or she says she knows what to buy if I win the lottery. I think she was talking about the Omega design there, which is,
you know, I have enough people saying that somebody's got to hit the lottery pretty soon. What am I cutting? Hey, Linda, would you hand me that piece that's on the sander there? Or just a little. This is another wood that I'm working with. This is Amboina burl. This is red Amboina burl.
oh wow.
Isn't that amazing? And that's one
Awesome.
of the Indonesian burls.
That's incredible.
Thanks.
Very cool. So what's like the craziest request you've gotten from somebody?
Well, way back in the beginning, I used to make a lot of different things besides boxes. And I made rolling pins and letter openers, and I made business card holders was one of my products. And this lady came in And she commissioned me to make a business card holder that would match her bed. I didn't ask her what her business was. I figured it was none of mine. I've made molds for chocolate. You know, I made the positive, I guess, that they were going to make the mold from for a person who was making dulcimer shaped chocolates. Somebody,
Cremation urns.
yeah, cremation urns, which is not that crazy, but I do those fairly frequently. In which case, I put a lock pin on the box, and it's just empty inside. And you have to remove the pin to open the box. Back when the Olympics were in Beijing, right before that, I was contacted to make a ping pong set and presentation case for President Bush to give to the president of China. And of course, I knew nothing about ping pong, and I went down to the Dick's Sporting Goods store and bought a ping pong set to figure out the proportions and all. Fortunately, they weren't really going to use it. It was more for show. But I had like 9 days from the time they were first contacted me to have it delivered to them. And that was kind of interesting. You know, neither of my favorite politicians, but I figured I was doing my part for American diplomacy.
Awesome. Rick wants to know if it's possible to get a quick tour of your shop.
Okay. My shop is a mess. It's tight. I have a lot of wood in here, and I've moved everything around to make this space for today. But I'll give you a quick tour. Phone's going to get a little, camera's going to get a little shaky here for a minute. And let me turn this around. There. Okay. So this is where I was standing. And well, that's where I was standing. I have a lot of machines in here, a lot of dust, a lot of wood. Well, let me go back here. This is my great wall of clamps. I work in batches usually, and I have enough clamps that by the time they're all applied, the first ones are ready to, they're already set and I can take them off. So, I'm working in a 2-car garage attached to my home. And
Show your stickered wood over here.
okay, so we're going to walk over here to the okay, all of these are pre-cut stacks of wood for boxes, like I showed you earlier, that are bundled together and will eventually become boxes. And they're all marked on the end with the size of the box, the name of the wood, when I cut it, and what the moisture content was at the time. And then over there is my finishing and shipping area. And over here is the lathe and my lovely wife. And that's about it. Well, I have to remind myself that it's not how the shop looks, it's how what comes out of it looks. That's important.
All right, well, thanks for the tour. That was great.
And I've been doing this for, like I said, almost 39 years. I've made probably over 14,000 boxes.
Wow.
People look at me now at shows and say, "Oh, did you start this when you retired?" Well, I left engineering when I was 27, so and I haven't retired yet, although I'm losing my voice.
Well, Darren mentions back on the issue of clamps, you can never have enough clamps. And Laura wants to know, how do you keep bugs and little nasty creatures out of your wood stacks?
I'm pretty careful about that. Mostly it's to not bring them in. If I have a wood that's contaminated, I don't bring it in. Sometimes you can't tell. I did have a storage unit of wood that various woods that got infested with powder post beetles, and it was pretty much a total loss. So yeah, I keep careful eye on that. I don't like to use poisons if I can avoid it. Some woods I've used boric hair on. It's just borax, and it keeps the boring beetles from surviving in it.
I'm starting to do the physical therapy.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like there's no more questions in chat. Anybody have any questions? You can just throw them out there or put them in chat.
I'm really encouraged by the questions. A lot of times when I'm doing these live things, nobody says anything. That makes it a lot harder for me to keep talking.
Right. What's the next pen show you're planning on going to? Do you have plans for any now that they're all kind of in the books?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at DC. I've got 3 tables booked, and I'm looking forward to being there. Unless something changes, I'm really looking forward to it. That'll be my first one. And I don't do a lot of pen shows. I've done the DC pen show for quite a few years now, and then St. Louis once they started. I did Atlanta a couple times and Triangle once, but mostly I go to art shows in different parts of the country and sell jewelry boxes. But I like the pen shows. They're a lot easier and have great customers.
Very good. Otto would like to know, what woods would you like to get your hands on?
I'd like to find some more of this if I could. I've been looking. I've got some more Amboyna burl, but it's excuse me, it's not as red as this. It's more of a golden color. Yeah, and when like I said, I buy it from an individual there, and has to be shipped by sea, and it takes at least 3 months to get here. And by the time it gets here, it's all moldy and nasty looking, but it's still a nice wood. I just like different, unusual, interesting woods, and if they're sustainably harvested or rescued, that's even better. But I'm a real soft touch. Like I was mentioning before, I have this friend who's a major wood dealer, and his business is only about 20 miles from here, and he sells to people like me and furniture makers and home builders, but also he sells to like the Woodcraft stores and other hobby stores like that. But I go up there and it's like at the grocery store, where they have the candy bars by the checkout. He's got these really special pieces set up along the walkway to his office, so you can't go by there without seeing them. And like last time I was there, I went up for a piece of, I went to buy this piece. This is Makakaba, and a customer had ordered a box and I had run out of it. So I went up there to get that, and I found a couple other pieces, and I even had him totaled up. It was like $400 something, which is pretty cheap for me for a visit there. And then I saw this slab, and it was just gorgeous. Well, it was that piece of the spalted wood that we showed you earlier. That was from a big slab that was like 7 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, and $800. But it came home with us. There'll be a lot of boxes in there.
Right. Matthew wants to know, how long does it take to make a box from start to shipping?
Well, I usually work in batches of anywhere from 20 to 60 boxes. And depending on the size, it's really hard to say. I do about 400 boxes a year. So if you average that out, that's about 8 boxes a week. Of course, start to finish, it's usually about a 3-week cycle for a batch. But it depends, again, on the size of the batch and the kind of boxes. Or if I'm making something like that one I showed you before, that takes about 3 weeks just to do the one box. If I have boxes, I usually have quite a few boxes on hand, and those I can ship out right away. Right now I'm in the middle of a batch. When I finish it, I've got to cut another couple of special projects I've got to do, and then about the middle of July, second week of July, I'll start making a batch for the DC pen show. I hope that answers your question. It really just depends on where I am and what kind of box you want.
Yeah, I think that gives us a pretty good idea. Darren would like to know, have you worked with Mali, Malee?
Oh yeah. Um, it's a eucalyptus. I've used Molly burl. Um, hang on a second. I'll be right back.
I feel like I should have some intermission music going. Oh, wow.
That's Molly, red Molly burl. So it's a eucalyptus burl from Australia. It's really pretty.
Beautiful. All right, Michelle asks, if someone was to have a chunk of wood that is sentimental for some reason, could it be made into a box, like a champion tree or something from an old house?
Yes, I've done that before several times. Most recently, a customer in Raleigh had an oak tree came down in his yard, and I'm not a big fan of oak. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of plain, but it had sentimental value to him. So he brought me some pieces of that. I sliced them up and dried them and made 3 boxes that I believe he gave to his daughters. Another time, a couple came to me that had had a family farm in Iowa, I think it was, and one of the uncles had cut down walnut trees over the years and converted them into lumber, and had been stored in a barn or something. But over the years, the family had no longer owned that farm, but they were having a reunion, and the couple still had the wood, so they brought me the wood, and I made, I think it was 14 boxes, and they gave one to each branch of the family, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Neat. Cool. Yeah, Darren asks, which wood do you absolutely hate to work with? For him, it's palm.
I agree with palm. That's nasty, nasty stuff. Linda, will you bring me that palm box over there? And Wingate is only a little bit better. Both of these woods, if you look at them wrong, you get a splinter, and it festers right away. This is black palm, and it's really pretty when it's finished, but it's a pain to work with. The black, you can see it's a mixture of black fibers with a lighter matrix. And the black fibers are really, really hard, and the lighter matrix is quite soft. So it's just really difficult to get it to finish smoothly and not have a splinter that'll like if you rub a cloth on it, it'll pick up the splinters. It's just nasty stuff, but it's gorgeous when it's done.
It is pretty. Cool. Rick is asking, have you ever considered partnering with Ryan Krusak and offering a pen and box of matching exotic wood?
Ryan, I've done a couple of projects with Ryan. He's a good buddy of mine, and he, I think it was last year, he had that purple pen that was, I think it had won a Pen World Prize. Anyway, I made Purple Heart boxes for his pen, and more recently he partnered with Lucky Star pens, and I made a box for them to put their pens in. Excuse me, it wasn't the same color, but it was a light holly box. So yeah, I've done that. I like working with Ryan, and his work is amazing. I can't get over how he does what he does.
Yep, yeah, he does some amazing work too. All righty, that's it for all the questions in chat. Any other ones anyone wants to throw out there before we wrap up? Yeah, doesn't look like it. All righty, well, I guess we will wrap up. Ray, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us the quick tour and showing us all your beautiful boxes and giving us a little glimpse into the back end work and the making of the sausage. We really appreciate it, and thanks for taking part of the St. Louis Pen Show this year.
You're welcome. It was lots of fun, and if any of you all see me at a pen show or other show, be sure to stop by and say hi.
Yeah, awesome. And for anyone who wants a quick click, I just put Ray's website into chat. And otherwise, thank you everybody for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. We've got 2 more sessions lined up today, so hopefully be something else that you enjoy going to. All right, thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you. See you later.
All right, bye-bye.
Guess it would have been